Hi, I'm Cameron, and I don't just read comics, I love them. On today's episode of Cameron Reads Comics, my friend Hannah and I are going to be going over Volume 1 of Jupiter's Legacy. We are reading this in anticipation of the soon-to-be-released Jupiter's Legacy Netflix series. We're going to be going over Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1, which collects the original title, Jupiter's Legacies number 1 through 5, written by Mark Millar and Frank Quitely. After recording this episode, we decided that we both need to record a second episode, so stay tuned for next week as we go over Jupiter's Legacy Volume 2. Just a warning, there are going to be full and complete spoilers for Jupiter's Legacy number 1 through 5, and remember to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Cameron Reads Comics, and make sure to clobber the like and subscribe buttons, as well as leave me a 5-star rating interview on iTunes. Now, here's your episode on Jupiter's Legacy. 1932, Sheldon Sampson's dreams about a mysterious source of power lead him, his brother Walter, and a group of loyal followers on a quest around the world. What they discover sets them on a course that will wrench a family apart and alter the world's political stage. Decades after their journey, Sheldon and Walter are superpowered legends, world-renowned for their heroism. But the offspring trained to live in their image have fallen desperately short. Rocked by one public scandal after another, Chloe and her brother Brandon are a dishonor to their family the generation before them. The rift reaches its breaking point when one branch of the family overthrows the government and struggles to rule at any cost, while the others must flee for their own safety. But when the failures of the corrupt leaders catch up to them, the world hovers on the brink of collapse, and the hidden heroes must emerge to take back their legacy. Okay, Hannah, welcome back to Cameron Reads Comics, and can I just say that we are so glad you're here, because I'm actually really excited to talk about this book in particular.
It's been a while since I've been on.
Yeah, it has been. You have been on, what, has it been a while?
I think my birthday was the last one we did.
And what did we read?
Bad Weekend.
That was the last time you were on?
Mm-hmm.
I find that hard to believe. Okay, well, you'll be back soon enough, because you're going to be back for ranking the Best Picture nominations.
The most fun. And the one that I'm like the most prepared and qualified for.
Yeah, probably.
These ones are a real crapshoot with me.
Well, it's like, it's always hard to find someone's tone, you know what I mean? Like, is giving them the right writers to read. And this one was kind of, I was like, Hannah can watch it, like read this and watch it, because I don't know how you felt about the book we read, but it was very short.
Was it?
It was only 5 issues.
Oh.
I'm like, did you read it in one sitting?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, then it was fairly short.
Okay. But all the ones you've given me have been.
Yeah.
My only context for comics thus far has been like easy to do in one sitting type of book. So that's my.
Hannah, you've officially read like 3 comics, so basically you're
I know.
You're a comic fan, and if people be like, "Oh, do you read Marvel?" You're gonna be like, "No, I actually read indie books," and they're like, "What?" And you're like, "Ooh, yeah, Millar World, that's me, Mark Millar, big fan." Ooh, Ed Brubaker, and they're gonna be like, "Who's that?" And you're gonna be like, he spent pretty much 10 years on Captain America, but he's also doing the Criminal Universe, and I'm a professional at that, so."
Ooh, that's a lot of information I got to retain to be able to talk about all those things.
That's how you're gonna mock people, so.
All right.
It'll be good.
I can't wait.
I can't wait for you. Hannah, so you are going to, well, let's just talk about what we read today. Number 1, Jupiter's Legacy.
I didn't know if we were like not saying the title
I
because you
didn't
were
say
like
it.
tiptoeing around it. You were like, the book that we read. I was
The
like,
book
are
we
we
read.
allowed to talk about what I read?
You know, we are filming
Are we allowed
this.
to name it?
Yeah, no. Actually, no. That's the new rule of the podcast. We don't own the IP for the move, for what we're reading. Let it be known amongst all the fans that I have not had my coffee hit this morning yet. Okay, I've had 2 cups, but it is not doing its job.
2 cups.
2 little.
I've had a sip of mine.
And you're still more awake than me? Must be nice.
I'm a morning gal these days.
I feel like I'm a morning guy, but it's the proof is not in the pudding. Let me tell you. So you and I are going to
let's just dive right in.
Let's dive right in. I'm like, why am I tiptoeing around?
I don't know. That's why I'm also confused.
Okay, so I guess Jupiter's Legacy, and for the fans contextually, they have, since the show is coming out, because there's a show coming out on this series. For the fans, the way they are numbering these volumes now is different. It's like the Star Wars films, where they came out for these books. They came out 3 and 4, and then they released 1 and 2.
And then they're going to go back?
Yes. So I think, there's 2 volumes of what we just read. You read the first volume.
So this came out after, but this is volume 1.
This is the first one that came out, but now in the new series that they're publishing, like
for the show.
Yeah, in the reprints, they are doing just like 1 and 2, or
Got
like
it.
this is volume 3 technically now, and and how they're distributing it.
Okay.
I'm like, that's not how they were released. This is number 1,
That's
and
confusing.
so it's like Star Wars 4, 5, 6, then 1, 2, 3.
It's still confusing to me.
You're telling me, and I'm like trying to find out what is the appropriate number 1. Maybe I missed all this context, but like I don't know. I think this book did a good job of like providing its context. So for the fans, we are reading Jupiter's Legacy number 1 through 5. It is, the covers with Chloe and I think that's
Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon, on the cover. So 1 through 5 of that series, how they were originally published. Hannah.
Wait, when you say 1 through 5, do you mean how like in this book there's chapters?
Yeah, but it was released as actual comic book issues. And actually, now that I think about it, you haven't read any like, because everything I've given you, the criminal stuff, is all like, it's just one book. Like that is it's called a one shot, meaning that it is just published like that.
It's a one and done.
Yeah, so it's like 60 pages, boom.
Right.
These are like, they come out monthly.
Oh,
so this
that's
is
interesting.
5 months worth of issues. So it's 5 issues of comic books in one volume.
Oh, I was wondering why you kept saying we read 1 through 5. I was like, Cameron, no, I read 1. I see what you're saying.
Okay, so it is
Got it.
issues number 1 through 5 collected in volume 1.
Got it. Got it.
And that's where we're at.
Cool.
So, okay, now I guess going into that, moving forward to actually the source material is my fault. We've not gotten there yet. What did you think about the story?
Oh, it was great. I loved it.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm surprised that I loved it.
Me too.
To be honest, I told you like a couple nights ago, or like 2 nights ago, I read the first like 5 pages, and I was really tired, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to like really like push myself through this one. And then last night, when I read it, I was like, it was quick. Like I was like, oh, okay, now I'm getting it. Because the one thing that I keep finding, not so much with My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, but I had the same problem in Bad Weekend, and I started to have the problem here. I cannot remember the characters' names for some reason.
But this one, and also with those stories, it's one thing when you're reading a Captain America story and you know who Captain America is, who Sharon Carter is. For this one, it's like we are being introduced to all these characters for the first time, and it is really kind of just dialogue bubbles that we are piecing together who is who, because they don't say, I'm Chloe. You know what I mean?
Right. So I feel like they throw a name out maybe one time. Mm-hmm. And in like a conversation, like they say to her, like, hey, Chloe, and then that's how you have to grab that's her name. And I read it, but like, it doesn't like stick. And then, so I was like, oh shoot, he's gonna like, I was already panicking about like recording it and talking to you about it. And I'm like, oh, he's gonna ask me like blah, blah, blah. And I'm not gonna remember. I'm gonna have to be like, oh yeah, the one guy with the black hair. But by the end of it, I know like I have all the names, but it just took me a minute. And then I was surprised that I liked it so much. And then I remember thinking like halfway through, I was like, I want to give this one to my brother. Like my brother's going to love this one.
Well, then tell him to watch the show. Like that's the best way we could spread these is like just watch the series, because this creator is actually just like so famous. Actually, for some more context into, I'm glad you liked it, number 1. but more context into this guy. Mark Millar is one of, people can say he's the best comic book writer, like modern comic book writer, and like I don't know, there's a solid argument there.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote, okay, so for your Marvel and DC content, he wrote Old Man Logan, which was the framework for the Hugh Jackman's final Wolverine movie, Logan. Hannah. So for the fans, Hannah was watching Civil War 2 nights ago, and so she read this last night. He wrote Civil War, the event for Marvel.
Oh my god.
Yeah, literally, and
I did so good.
I don't know if it's a reflection of you, anyway, but it's he did a bunch of stuff like that. But even more, like he did Superman Red Sun, which is arguably one of the best Superman stories that's not even quite about Superman. But yeah, his footprint, like, okay, Kick-Ass, Kingsman, he's written all those. And so Netflix bought he has an imprint of his own name because he was taking on all these titles. Jupiter or Millar World is the imprint that he owns.
Okay.
So his name's Mark Millar.
Is the show going to be on Netflix?
Yeah, it's already.
It is, okay.
How's this casting for you? The Utopian is going to be played by Josh Duhamel. Okay.
That was how you intro to how you were like, here, read this book. We're going to watch this movie, or we're going to watch this show. Josh Duhamel plays the guy. And I was like, okay. Sure.
Mike.
I hadn't ever really professed myself as like a huge Josh Duhamel fan, but that was your leading argument. And I was like, yeah, it works.
I'm like,
it's good enough for me. Except now after this, I'm like, wait. Am I allowed to do full spoilers on this?
Yeah, full spoilers, girl.
Well, like he's gonna die.
Yeah, but okay.
real quick.
This is why. Well,
real quick in there.
Think about what. No, not that quick. So the show is gonna be. So the way they were released. Remember, it was 3, 4, then 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 2 volumes now that have been deemed the prequels of this series is all his story with his wife.
Oh, okay.
And
that makes
the uncle.
more sense.
And so it's like they're going to go back and look. And, there's a lot of time that he's going to spend on the island. I think the series is going to end with with his death.
Oh.
I mean, I think there's a lot of wiggle room in there. And if you want to, I'm like, we can pick this up. Because I really enjoyed reading this as well.
And there's one that comes after this, yeah?
Yeah, there's like 3.
Because the way this one ends is very like, there's going to be another issue. Oops, sorry.
Hannah's hitting her mic. It's okay, though.
I'm just being you.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, welcome to the club. It's a very lonely journey. Okay, let's just get into the characters. How did you feel about the dichotomy between the idealism before they got their powers and then the vanity within how their children treat their powers? So you have, and I wrote down the names, so you're already better than I am because I couldn't follow that well. So Sheldon Sampson is the Utopian. Walter Sampson is Brainwave, his brother. Grace Kennedy Sampson is Sheldon's wife, the Utopian's wife. She is Lady Liberty. Then they have 2 children, Chloe and Brandon. That is the Utopian's children. So the Utopian is like pretty much Superman. He's idealism. He is hope, and he is just trying to do the best he can. And then, he's pretty much the world's great. I really like the idea too that he has a secret identity, and he values his secret identity, and like he just is a mechanic during the day.
Well, it's like endearing about him, and it's like very old school, very like classic. Like he reminds me of somebody who's like our grandparents, who's like, no, this is how we do it. This is the way. This is how we always done it. Like very like true to the country, very like patriotic, very like by the book sort of, and like in all his values. I mean, aside from obviously the huge topic or like the underlying topic is how he failed as a parent because he was so distracted and so busy saving other people, and like, but like his ideals and his values are so sweet and like old fashioned. And then his brother on the flip side is the one who's like, our system's broken, which was like relatively timely. I mean, his was way more like economically driven, but like all of the arguments that they were having, I was like, I've heard this recently. And
which goes to show too that like all of the issues are like cyclical.
Yeah.
Like, it's how like inflamed they are at the moment. Anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about.
But it reminded me a little bit of the uncle, Walter, right?
The uncle is Walt, yeah.
that's like the influence that I was like, oh, those are like very like very subtle reminders for me of the boys, especially afterwards, like after they take over and like in their world they're like, why are we hiding? Like superheroes are supposed to be like egotistical, and in that world, like that was like very much of like how it was with the boys, like the vanity of it and the self-obsession and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just thought it reminded me.
I think you told me that.
What, that it reminded me of the boys?
Yeah.
Oh, it totally did. Because, you know, it's a thing that lifts the veil of superheroes.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's so interesting, and especially like the way that we're referring to, what's the face, like Walt as old-fashioned. I find that so interesting because I'm like, my question then would be like,
Walt wasn't old-fashioned.
Or sorry, Walt, not Sheldon or Utopian. Him being old-fashioned, did you feel like he was actually old-fashioned? Do you think that his principles were out of touch and like they've expired?
No, I guess not. I guess
because that's like a big thing that has been taking place in the current, like I've seen it a lot in Superman stories, but I've seen it in like, I think that's one of the conversations that surrounds the boys and like other things are like, are these ideas worth fighting for? Because I think one of the best things that makes a good villain is that, you know, what Walt did is the most logically consistent thing. He's like, he used logic and you know what I mean, there was critical thinking there, and I think if you look at it on paper, it is the correct move. But giving people the free will to actually do what they did, like to make that decision, is an entirely different thing, and that's what Utopian's fighting for. He's like,
right.
We are, but then Walt's like, we can use our powers for something greater, and I'm like, I'm chewing on it.
But then it's hard too because they didn't.
Exactly.
And so, I guess maybe outdated or like old fashioned, it wasn't really like the right. I feel like what he was saying and what Utopian was like standing for are the more like the classic values that have been what we've been raised on, what our parents, our grandparents, it's like this, they're the same themes that are in like any movie, any Marvel even, of like fighting for humanity and like having faith in people and fighting for the greater good of other, you know, and like
watch the Civil War once. Sorry. She literally just watched it.
Okay, but I also have to, I've seen it before.
I know.
This wasn't, no, I'm like letting people know that I'm not, it's not like I've never seen Civil War. I just had questions from Falcon and Winter Soldier that I felt like I could use a refresher. So I rewatched Civil War.
Okay.
And it was better the second time, I'm going to say.
Oh, that's
significantly better than the first time I watched it.
Yeah, there were. Anyways,
my point is maybe their values are not. I don't think they're outdated, but I think that they're old. I meant old-fashioned in the sense of like they're classic. They're reoccurring.
Yeah.
They're like the themes that I would not say are wrong at all, but in the way that it gets posed between like Walt's argument and Sheldon's argument, Walt does make a better argument. Like his what he's describing, even I was like, oh, Sheldon, come on,
be cool, man,
get with it, get with the times.
Yeah, right.
You know, and he's like, we need to have faith in like the politicians we elect, and I was like, oof. Another argument I've heard recently.
Anyways, yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. How'd you feel about the relationship of the Utopian with his children?
Okay, so at first, I honestly did not like Sheldon. Like the way, and I don't know if that's how they wrote it, and so I just did exactly what he wanted, which is probably the case.
Yeah.
But today, I was thinking about it when I was driving here, and I think it's such an interesting dynamic that both Brandon and Chloe are very clearly messed up from their parents and from their dad in particular, but it's such a different dynamic and such a different relationship between father and sons and fathers and daughters.
Yeah.
And there's so much like softness with Chloe and there's not that at all with Brandon. Like, even though like Chloe's just as much of a fuck up as Brandon is in her own ways, it's like she's still received with much more love and like she comes back in a much more sweeter sense. And then the way Grace is talking about, like, oh, your dad's so excited about the pregnancy. He brought the toys out. He was getting everything ready.
Oh my gosh. And then that's the scene.
And then that's the scene. But those, you never see any of that with Brandon. Like, it's much, I mean, obviously, I hated Brandon the whole time.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I mean, he was hot, but I didn't like him.
I'm like, dang. But also, I'm like, yeah, no.
But so was Hutch.
He wasn't a good guy. Hutch,
Dreamy.
Oh, okay. Well, wait. Oh, no, there's more. There's more questions. My brain's figuring itself out right now. Yeah, no. I think I like Sheldon. I think you're right. I think that there's half of it where it's like we don't like where he's coming from. We aren't huge fans of like what his principles are, or like I guess there's a great scene that kind of shows why we don't like him and like
Sheldon or Brandon?
Sheldon.
Uh-huh.
But why he's right is because it's when Walt is he interrupts the meeting that Walt has with like the Congress, and he's like, hey, you can't be doing this. And he's like, why can't I do this? And Walt lays out pretty much a really great reasoning on why he should use it, and then Sheldon just ends it and he says, because I said so. And it's like, and he says, oh, like, I can see why your children feel so disenfranchised. And it was like, he just got gutted. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was the first time I was ever just like, ooh. Like,
and you're kind of on Walt's side in the beginning too, because he has that whole conversation like right in the beginning after they take down that first like villain guy, and he's Walt's talking in defense of Chloe and Brandon, and you kind of feel like I came at it from like being protective over like the kids and feeling bad for them, and then feeling like Walt was kind of on their side and kind of trying to explain that to Sheldon. And like Sheldon does come off like a super pompous asshole. Like he's super like he's not likable in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. Who's your favorite character?
Chloe.
Chloe was your favorite?
Or Hutch.
Hutch was my favorite because he's, oh my gosh, this actually ties into a wonderful conversation we've had this week. Okay, so for the listeners, you may hate me if you need to unsubscribe from the podcast based on this opinion. I get it. I'm like, do what you want.
Oh no, I'm scared.
Okay, I've been watching Game of Thrones, and I think I'm at tail end of season 5. I might be in season 6 now. And I think that Ramsay is incredibly charming of a villain. I just think he is.
I thought you agreed that you're gonna not claim him as charming.
I'm just like,
I thought you took that back.
This was the fruition of that conversation, but this has to do. The fruition of that conversation was I thought he was charming. Whether or not I think that now, I probably just won't declare publicly. But never mind that. Anyways, now
you just did.
Yeah, literally. That's why I said never mind.
This is the most public. It's recorded live.
Hannah, I love my followers. I don't have that many, so it's not as public as if I'm going to be known as this guy. I will gladly.
What if this is the thing that makes you famous?
I'm down. I got also. If you disagree, go listen to my 30 plus other episodes, and maybe we'll find something we agree on. So.
Okay, I'm just curious to see where you're going to tie that back into this, to Jupiter's Legacy.
Hutch is the son of a supervillain that betrayed, what's his face? That betrayed the Utopian.
Yeah.
I don't think Hutch isn't a good guy. He's not a superhero. And so my point is, he's a very charming supervillain, and that's what I like about him. And
but Hutch isn't a supervillain.
Yeah, he is.
He's done nothing villainous in
the story that you know him as, but he's the son of a supervillain. He's not a superhero, and that's the difference.
I know that.
I guess you're right. Maybe he's a supervillain, but how's this? I don't think he's a good guy.
Why?
Because they like have super crazy coked up sex, and that's why they're exes.
Okay, but you're using
what?
Well, what are we talking about? Because
I'm saying
in this issue in what I read,
yes.
Which I can't argue. We can't have a conversation about what you read and I didn't, and how they portray Hutch and other things. In this, he's not. There's nothing about him that I find at a fault whatsoever. I mean, he's a druggie at first. Yeah, he like supplied.
Yeah. He was what's the word he says? He's like,
he's a
drug distributor.
Yeah, he said it because it's a different like tax bracket.
Oh, that's
or like
exactly
it's a
why.
different salary.
I just think what they did with that character was, number one, it reaffirmed that because he's not a proper superhero. Whether or not he's a supervillain, I guess that's up for debate. But he's not a good person. He's a drug dealer. He is not good for the daughter,
but he turns out to be.
No, I think I think that's one of the strengths of this book is that the paradigm shift of the good guys actually really becoming the bad guys, and then the bad guys kind of become the good guy. Because I wouldn't say Chloe's a hero or a good character, anyways. Because cut to Chloe and Brandon. Brandon's trying to save that boat, and then all the shipping crate, like container boat, and all the containers start falling off because he's like all drugged, drunk.
Yeah, Brandon is consistently horrible.
I suppose, but okay.
As of right now, as of what I have read, there is nothing redeeming in Brandon.
Really?
Nothing.
I'm
but
shocked.
in Chloe and in Hutch,
they're the
just
best.
constant redemption.
They're the best.
And so I don't look. Your argument right now, is
explain it to me because I don't know how I'm coming off right now. In my head, everything makes sense, and I'm
you should have gone for cup 3 or 4, maybe.
Cusp of greatness right now. I'm like, Cameron, did you just solve world hunger with that thought? Maybe.
Well, did you just see that?
Yes.
That was a mouse. Sorry.
Okay.
You can cut that out.
We're not going to. For the fans, we are recording in a place, and there are mice that live here sometimes. We just saw one of them.
He's just a little guy.
He's just a little fella. It's just a little ratatouille.
Anyways, here's what I'm hearing from you. You don't like Hutch, and you don't think that... I'm sorry. It's not that you don't like Hutch.
That's not what I said, yeah.
You think that Hutch is a villain, and you don't think that Chloe is a good person either,
yes.
But you're basing that off of the fact that they were once upon a time drug users?
I guess it's more...
Where's your empathy, Cameron? Where is your ability to see the road of recovery as their strength?
I do need cup 3 or 4. Okay.
And I feel like, yes, he was a drug dealer.
What did you say is their strength?
Their road to recovery.
Oh my gosh. Keep it chill, Super Soul Sunday. Oh my gosh. I'm like, hey, I didn't say that. All right.
Oh my God, you just compared me to Oprah.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
All
I'm saying is she was a drug user. He was a supplier. They have a clearly tumultuous relationship that's like, is probably influenced heavily by their drugs. And like you referenced a weird sex world, but I haven't seen that yet.
Weird sex world?
You said they have weird sex.
Well, I just mean like the fact that they're not supposed to be together and they're dysfunctional and...
Oh, but I love a good forbidden
love. And that's why I knew you'd
love.
This book was literally a combination of My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies and The Boys. And I was like, this is Hannah all over it.
But you know what's even better?
What?
What I love more than a glorified drug use story is one that ends well.
Did this end well?
Yes.
Okay, but wait. Let me go back to defending what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Let me bridge some gaps that the coffee...
Because you sound like an asshole right now.
Oh, good.
I'm just kidding.
That's always great. I probably do. It's fine. It's probably not the first time either.
No, it's our classic debate. We have it constantly.
Yeah, okay. Oh my gosh.
I want you
to provide
feel
lots of context.
more.
Okay, so really what I was trying to say is that there's those two, and they... have pretty much no right being together. I don't think he is traditionally a good person.
Well, neither is she.
Well, I know. That's what I'm trying to say. And so, but I do think that number one, he's my favorite character because I think he is charming, and you see his redemption story, and you find out that
is charming.
Yeah.
Ramsey. Not.
And that's what I was trying to say. Is like, oh wow, do you think he can exist as a charming? He's not quite a villain, and I think you're right. But he is not I don't think he's a good guy. I think he turns into a good guy, and I think you find out that he is a better person than everyone else who we thought were good guys.
Which I'm also a sucker for.
And so I'm down for that, but I don't think that he is. And maybe I'm using some old-fashioned, like yardsticks that aren't quite some measurements that aren't quite like timely anymore or quite as valid. And I will definitely receive the brunt of that ramification, or like, I know that, hearing myself say it and then you question it, I'm like, ooh, you're right. That isn't like quite good. But I think that I guess he wasn't a villain ever, but he was never quite a good guy either.
He wasn't a good guy in the first 10 pages.
Yeah, literally.
And then he's a great guy.
And that made an impression. I sang that for the audience.
I'm going to pretend you tried to not compare him to Ramsay and just take your argument as him being a villain in itself.
And he's charming.
Right. So I'm going to just try to let that be your argument and pretend that you didn't say the Ramsay thing, because I will take you down if that's your argument, because I could give you it's also tough because you haven't finished
Game of Thrones.
So I can't go crazy, but also where you are and what you have seen is enough.
Yeah, that's true. But also,
what has Hutch done? He was a drug dealer.
He also freaking threw a guy. He literally threw a guy into shark-infested waters. That was pretty chill.
That was kind of sick.
It was so sick, and I'm like,
but he was a bad guy.
The cool thing is though, like,
also I forgot about that.
What? Yeah, I was like, Hannah, it's not like he's a freaking angel right now. And you're like, what did he do that was bad? And I was like, he was a drug dealer. And you're like, what? And I was like, they're like, we have mind powers and super strength. And he's just like, shark infested waters. And he's like, unless you want to go to like air, what do you say? Go in the air or be the first man on the moon.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but apparently, according to Hannah, he's a good guy. No, because I think again, the narrative.
I love a complicated man and a complicated love story. What can I say?
He's got layers. Hannah just comes in on the podcast and she says, I can fix him. Okay, so
reoccurring theme in my life that gets me nowhere.
Yeah, okay, but wait. I think I originally asked, and this is how the coffee's not hitting. I originally asked how do we feel about the utopian's relationship with his children? And I think that it is such a interesting and human dynamic to pursue the fact that he is trying to take care of the entire world, and thus the two most familially, the two most relationships he should care about, he has failed at. And then he's like, I didn't only fail you, I also failed your sister. And then you find her, she's a humanitarian, but then she's like doing coke, ODs. It's crazy. Oh my gosh.
Nice.
I loved it.
And also, of course, he failed.
Elaborate on that.
I mean, like you said, he was trying to save the whole world and keep the whole world afloat. There's no room. Being a good parent takes all your energy in itself, and all your time and all your skill, and that's not something's got to give. So if you've got the whole, literally the weight of the whole world on your shoulders, there's no way that your kids were going to be okay, and you weren't going to something was going to get sacrificed. Unfortunately, he clearly put more priority in the world, whether that was because there was more fame in that or more vanity in that or more whatever. He clearly got more gratification for saving the whole world than he did for his kids. Maybe at some point he realized that his kids are too far gone, and he wasn't able to cope with that.
Yeah.
Which is why he was just consistently hard on them, when what he really should have done at some point was be kind and soft and generous towards them. But I felt like the mom and Chloe's relationship was very much not very much, but the way that she welcomes her back.
Okay, the mom. We need to talk about this.
Here we go.
This was the most important detail. Okay.
She gets freaking gutted.
Oh no, not quite that.
Oops.
I was going an entirely different way. But I need to make sure we say it because it is consistent with Hannah and Cameron's story, which is the mother in the television series is going to be portrayed by Leslie Bibb. Leslie Bibb.
No, she's not.
Is the wife to the one and only,
the great
Sam Rockwell.
God damn it. That is just beautiful.
Isn't that the best thing you've ever heard?
It's the best thing you've ever heard.
I have
such a smile on my face right now.
It is a big one. But yeah, okay, so let's go back.
I mean, talk about a dreamy couple, though.
Oh my!
Just real quick.
You know what the best part too, and for the Iron Man 2 fans, Leslie Bibb and Sam Rockwell. So in the first Iron Man, Tony Stark like sleeps with Leslie Bibb's character, and then the next film, she's interviewing Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer and whatever tech industry is going on. But she literally cuts the interview short when he had, or pretty much Tony rubs in Sam Rockwell's face that he slept with this chick. But then on top of that, she cuts the interview short with Justin Hammer to go watch Tony like fight Whiplash in the whatever race it was.
Which one is that in, the third?
The second one.
Oh.
And it is just the best thing because I'm like, that's actually his wife. So I'm like, I love that entire dynamic. Anyways, that there's a great.
That's our traditional Sam Rockwell tangent that has to happen.
It must.
And now we can get back to the story.
And I'm like, what's the Kevin Bacon game? Like the
6 degrees or 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
6 degrees of Sam Rockwell every time on this podcast.
We'll find a way to loop him in.
Oh, gladly. So, okay. How did you feel about this cynical approach to superheroes as opposed to something you've seen on The Boys or other media? How did you feel about their approach?
What do you mean?
In Jupiter's Legacy, like, this is not, when you see capes and when you see, like, I guess superheroism, we have a posture that we have been, just kind of saturated with towards them, which is we like them, or they are going to be upright. They are going to be good.
Okay. Well, I feel like The Boys doesn't do that to me.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, with 20 plus Marvel films and however many DC movies, we kind of have a posture towards that.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this one?
This particular posture towards them.
Yes. Like, I think they portrayed them as, yes, they can have superpowers and yes, they can try and save people, but no matter what, under the mask, and despite all of your ability, we have flawed characters. And I think that's what works in the story.
Yeah. Well, so they didn't, maybe just, I didn't feel like there was a long enough build in the beginning of, like, why you love these superheroes or these characters.
Yeah.
So when they like turn on them and they kind of become the like villain and they kind of become the ones doing all of the damage, I didn't have any feeling towards them of like, oh, I used to really like that character. Now like, so like I just looked at all of them honestly like the villain, because I didn't ever have a point where I was like, oh, I love these superheroes. Like, it would be like if all of a sudden they tried to make like Captain America like terrible, I would be like gutted and like so heartbroken about it, but like I didn't care about these characters. I don't even know their names. Like, they were just like, well, they were just people to me who were like good, and then all of a sudden they were bad, and I was like, oh, so they're just bad. Like, I didn't ever have a moment with them. So I don't, and they don't really show the world's response. They don't show them being like overly popular or famous with like just like society. So that also, I didn't have that side of it either. Whereas like The Boys, it's like on the outside, it's very glorified of who they are. Mm-hmm. In Marvel and DC, it's like like they're all well received, but like they don't show that in this one. So the only people that I ended up caring about at all were like Chloe Hutch and their kid. And anybody who was trying to hurt them, I was like, you're the villain, you're the villain, you're the villain. Brandon, I get it. Like, I get where they're going with his character. And I'm excited to like keep reading it, but I'm not, as of right now, I'm also like, you are such like a spineless fool.
Damn, going right for the jugular, right for the spinal. What kind of injury was that? Spinal. Like, but if you don't know that meme, look it up. But actually, we have not talked about Uncle Walt really enough, in my opinion, and so really kind of the plan that he enacted. Before we go into that and like his arc, how'd you feel about like him as a character and like, I guess the sequence of him? I think one of the best, I guess, uses of writing in the medium was, oh, I took you to a really beautiful beach and like in your mind. So he can like, he has like telekinesis powers, and he like, once he gets into people's heads, he can like, put their consciousness in somewhere else while their physical body is getting ravaged. How did you feel about that the first time?
Well, so it happens like really right off the bat, like page 1 or 2 even, really, where he's like talking to him and he's like, oh yeah, you're on a beach, but like, oh, they just broke your backbone. Oh, they just ripped your arm off. Oh, they just, as the guy's just like thinking he's like laying there on the beach. But like, I don't know that I fully grasped what was happening at that point in time. So it wasn't until the thing with Grace happened where I really was like realizing what his powers are and like the extent of what he does and like how much he like messes with your mind. So it was the first time I was kind of like, oh, what's happening? Okay, whatever. And then the second time I was like, oh shit.
The second time was like, dang.
And that was when I realized like how powerful he is.
Yeah, it's like you don't realize because you never see, again, we never see someone like Charles Xavier do something like that.
Right.
It's like I think he has his issues, or like for my DC fans, like Martian Manhunter, who's the alien, he's an alien member of the Justice League. He can read people's minds, and he's like, there's been like plots of like whether or not he should, and like he kind of decides to go against using his going into someone's head, unless it's like a supervillain with like, where's the bomb, where's the trigger, like something like that. But for the most part, he understands that that's incredibly invasive. I felt like we saw with Walt, it was like, ooh, I don't care.
Yeah, he's got no boundaries.
No boundaries, and when you have that much power, it makes sense to not think to feel the boundaries don't apply to you.
Right.
Then, okay, so we had that because I was like, I just really want to touch on that because the thing I think Mark Millar does is he uses his brain to really think, but also he shows us different ways that these powers could work in very intriguing and like menacing ways. I think this story is sometimes comics can just be mean in spirit, and I think his books can be kind of mean. I think The Boys is one of those things that's just kind of mean in spirit. It's like, ooh.
It's very mean.
And so...
it's too mean for me.
I'm like, I couldn't hear you over like 9.2 you gave it, but anyways.
I did not.
You gave it like a 9, season 2.
Oh, yeah, I might have.
Anyways, so apparently Hannah likes the bad boys, but
we knew that.
She's like, I could fix the boys, but what am I trying to say? Going back to, how did you feel about his arc of then overthrowing the Utopian? Did you see that coming? I felt like that was kind of out of the blue, and then how many people he got to recruit.
Right. Well, that's the thing that's kind of crazy that I'm like, maybe it's just because that was all that I have read, but like I thought it was interesting that like, or I wish I had more context to like how he was able to get so many people to turn on him. Like obviously they make references to him being super, like how his example, like the example that you gave of like his reasoning was just because I said so. Like, yeah, that's clearly like what the issue is that many people have with him. But like the fact that he got the entire
like Justice League or whatever it be.
Yeah, whatever that is in this world to turn on him, and the fact that he recruited his son to do it is like so much proof of how manipulative he is. And he didn't even have to like get into Brandon's mind to do that. He really just kind of like talked to him and was like, you want to be the one to do it because like you're pretty strong. And then like there was enough in him already to do it. So his character is so, I mean, obviously it's important, it's like the most important, it's the whole reason for this whole story in the first place. But like I forgot where I was going with that.
Okay.
I got really distracted because I read Crystal Geyser on that water bottle for some reason.
This is how it's going. Hannah and I both need some coffee today. So
I was like, Crystal Geyser.
You were saying how it's so interesting that he used Brandon. Do you think that, because you're like, Brandon doesn't have any redemption, whatever. I think he's a pretty terrible like dude, obviously. I'm not going to be here.
Is he charming though?
I'm like, yes. He's definitely charming. Hannah, you literally said he's hot, so he's charming.
No.
You literally did.
I know. I have said that, but that doesn't make him charming.
I think that his frustration with his father is so justified.
100%.
And that's why I think it's hard to say that a character earns a death. But narratively, and as we were talking about these fictitious characters, I'm obviously not pro murder. I'm making sure the audience knows. I think that the Utopian's death was earned. And at Brandon's hand, it made the whole thing feel like very Shakespearean.
Well,
like narratively, like is this not for my fans like Hamlet, or for others, The Lion King? You know what I mean? Like, is Walt not Scar to Sheldon's Mufasa?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
well,
I think in
Mufasa, that was just cold blooded.
He's like
there was like that was really just him wanting power.
And is that not what Walt did?
Yeah.
Exactly. He wanted power. And so
yeah,
I'm like,
he did.
And so to recruit his son is a little more vindictive, a little more villainous, but
way more.
I don't know, but also what Brandon's perspective, like, it was echoed throughout the entire, like, 3 issues building up.
I don't think that Brandon's drug problems or drinking problems or his daddy issues or any of those things are unjustified whatsoever.
Yeah.
Clearly Sheldon fucked him up.
Yeah.
Sorry, messed him up. And like
I'm like, earmuffs.
like, that is obvious, and I don't think that Sheldon deserves to be recognized as, not that he doesn't deserve to be recognized as a hero, because obviously in many instances he was a hero. He saved a lot of people.
Great.
But like, to Brandon, I just think to like kill your dad because he was hard on you or like absent is like, that is a stretch.
Yes. Yes, yeah, and also, it's not completely justified, but I think the reasons narratively they gave us for that death to happen made it like, yeah, I can see why that happened, and like, it shows too, because I think what we're going to see, because I read the second volume of this, like the sequel book to this one, but I really don't remember any of it. I literally this was like, I read this like a year ago, guys, and this second time is like I was reading it for the first time all over again. I just totally
lovely.
my that's how my retention works. Is like I can get it for like the podcast or for like the week I read it, and then after that I'm just on to the next thing. And so that's why it's great that this is a weekly platform. But with, I think what we're going to see is the Chloe has redemption, and I think we're going to see the redemption of Brandon. That's what I really think. I don't remember. But
that's what I was trying to say, was like, I see where they're taking Brandon's character.
Yeah.
And like, even from when he kills his dad and he's kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. Like, I feel like they start to put in these little tones of him being like they're like tiny little breadcrumbs of like what we're gonna get. Like, we're gonna see more redemption from him and like a more complete arc. I feel like, especially because when they went after everything happens, and then he's is he in the White House in that scene with Walt? Okay. And he's like looking out the window, and there's all these people like protesting.
Oh, yes.
I think he is, right? And he's like, this isn't what we talked about. Like, the food lines are even longer, and the people are rioting and they're protesting, and like, you told me this was going to be better, this was going to fix things, like, and I feel like you start to see that like he is now seeing the damage that he did, and maybe underestimated what his dad's responsibility was. And I feel like you just start to see a little part of him being like, maybe I was wrong. But like, he doesn't, but again, I feel like that's not enough in my mind. That's not like redemption, because he doesn't do anything about it. He just lets Walt put him in a fake world where everyone's clapping for him.
Yeah, that was mess. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So I'm like, as of right now, I don't have any part of me that is like feels positively towards him. I understand him.
Except that he's cute though.
Yeah.
Okay, really important detail though.
Sure, but he's no Hutch.
Hutch is dreamy as heck, man. I'm like, oof.
I know.
All right, well, Hannah, we got to wrap it up. But honestly, let's just read the next volume and talk about it again. That's how these things get planned like that, all right? You just saw a window on the inside. Because, and honestly, I'd love to read, maybe we'll read the next one next week, but I think we can crush the first 2 volumes. Like I think we're going to see the stuff with Hutch's dad and Utopian.
And the show comes out in May, right?
Show comes out in May. So we're recording this in March, and this is going to come out pretty soon. But
it's April. It's April Fool's Day.
It's April Fool's Day today.
Yeah.
As we record. So there you go. Happy April Fool's Day. We're not kidding when we say that we're going to record more. So I'm like, that's not an April Fool. Okay, Hannah, the last question. What would you rate this out of 10?
Oh my God, I hate this so much.
This is a great question.
It is, but it's my least favorite because I'm incredibly indecisive. And then I give a low score and I feel guilty.
And then
I give a high score and then I feel like, oh, well, then that doesn't leave anything else out there to be better.
That's not true. That is not true. I'm like, I have 16 tens.
8.
8, okay. Honestly, a very good score. I'd say, I don't know. I thought some of the pacing with the book was a little bit off. And, next week, next time, we really need to talk about the relationship between Claire and Hutch and their child.
Chloe.
Because we didn't even, exactly. That's how I'm doing today. But yeah,
April Fools.
April Fools, it was Chloe. That's what. We didn't even talk about that yet at all.
I know,
and I feel like
really did not even get into we went on too many tangents.
That was half the series, and that is my fault. Okay, so
let's record at night next time.
Maybe TBD. So okay, we are going to go over that next time, and my score is going to be honestly like a 7.5.
Oh, see, then that makes me question if I went too high.
Hannah, if you liked it, I literally went 0.5 under you. Literally.
Okay.
I'm like, calm down. Yeah, I give it a 7.5. It's good. I just need, I guess I wanted more context into all of it. And yeah, but also, and we didn't even mention, Frank Quietly's art is one of my absolute favorites. I think he is one of depicting like humanity or even those above humanity is, what a
freaking name too.
He is amazing, and
Cool.
everything he does, I think, is just mesmerizing. He's a little bit of a divisive artist, but I think what he does. Also, there's a shout out to Long Beach in this book, and I'd be remiss if we didn't even mention it.
Thank you so much for saying that. Last night I thought, talk about that.
That's why Hannah likes Hutch, because they found him in Long Beach, and then he transported the dude to shark infested waters. So
love me Long Beach bad boy.
Alrighty. Thanks, Hannah, so much for coming on. We'll talk more about that later.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.